Hi, grade sevens. Welcome to week 2 of math. Most of you were getting excellent results with the gains and losses and the integer work you did last week. So everybody is understanding the concepts very well. Congratulations. This week, it's not much different. Okay. This week, what we're doing is officially adding integers. But really, when you're adding integers, it's the same thing as when we were calculating the overall gain and the overall loss. So it really isn't anything different. It may just be written slightly more official, but in reality, it is the exact same thing. Okay, so let's take a look at what it's going to look like this week. The big difference this week is there's going to probably be brackets around your work when you're looking at it on the worksheets. So we use brackets when adding integers because the signs for adding and subtracting look exactly like the positive and negative signs in front of the integers. And if we don't put the brackets in there, it could get very confusing. So if you look at the first expression there, plus 3 subtract plus 4, it can be a little confusing, but if we put brackets around one of them, and usually it's the second one that gets the brackets, then you can see it is indeed plus 3 subtract positive 4. Okay? Or the second expression is you have negative 5 plus 3 plus negative 2. Well, again, same problem, but if we put brackets around this, it gets a little more organized. It's negative 3 plus positive 3 plus, and this is where we can put brackets as well, negative 2. Okay, so we want to make sure that you understand the difference between adding and positive and subtracting and negative. Okay, so that's why the brackets are there, and that's the only reason the brackets are there. You don't need to be freaked out about brackets this week. Okay, brackets are just to help you see the difference between positive and adding and subtracting and negative. Okay, that's the only reason. The other thing you need to understand is what an opposite integer is. And we went over this somewhat last week, but we're just going to reiterate it again. Okay. Opposite integers are the same number, but opposite signs. So when you gain the same amount as you lose, then you end up with nothing. So opposite integers always add to 0. Okay, I'm sure that's what we were doing when we were canceling out gains and losses. Remember that from last week when we had the same gain as loss, then they canceled each other out. So that's all we're saying right here is when we have, negative 4 plus positive 4, they cancel each other out. Okay, they add to 0. That's what we mean when they say cancel each other out, is it adds to 0. So let's review last week. Okay, so if we had a loss of 4 and a gain of 3, then overall we had more loss, so we'd still have a loss, and the difference between the two was a loss of 1. Okay. If we had a loss of 5, a loss of 1, a gain of 6, a gain of 7, and a loss of 4, then what we did is we put them all together, right? So we put all our losses together. So we had a loss of 5, loss of 1, loss of 4, plus a gain of 6, plus a gain of 7. Then we would combine all our losses. So a loss of 5, a loss of 1 is 6, loss of 4 is loss of 10, plus combine your gains, and you had 13. What do you have more of? You have more gains. And how many more gains did you have? You had 3 gains. Okay, well, guess what? You just added integers. Adding integers is exactly the same thing. You added negative 10 and positive 13. Super easy, huh? So here's the shortcut that I mentioned to some of you before. Okay. So when you are combining or adding, okay, if you have, come here, a positive number plus a positive number, your answer will always be positive. So a gain plus a gain, you can't do anything but gain, right? If you have a loss plus a loss, you can't do anything but, sadly, lose. The trick comes when you have a gain and a loss, right? And we talked about this last week. So what it is which one is bigger? And then how much bigger? Right? I'm not kidding when I'm saying we're doing exactly the same thing we did last week. It's just in a little more official capacity. Okay? So let's take a look at what this would look like. So, -4 plus -5. I have 4 negatives, and I'm adding 5 more negatives. Well, there's no positives in there whatsoever, so all I'm going to get are negatives. And how many? Well, 4 plus 5 is 9. What about 6 plus 10? Well, is 6 positive? There's no sign in front of it, so how do I know? Well, remember from last week, we said mathematicians are efficient, so positive numbers do not have to have a positive sign in front of them. If there is no sign in front of a number, we assume it is positive, and we assume correctly this time. You are allowed to assume sometimes, in math anyway, okay? So 6 with no sign in front of it is positive 6. 10 with no sign in front of it is positive 10. So both of these are positives. So my answer has no option but to be positive. And 6 with 10 more is 16. Okay, those are the easy ones. So if they're both negatives, your answer is going to be negative. If they're both positive, your answer is going to be positive. What about when they're different? So what about this? Okay, I have -4 plus positive 10. So just like when we were doing gains and losses, what do I have more of? Do I have more negatives? Do I have more positives? Well, I have -4 and I have positive 10. So I definitely have more positives. And how many more positives do I have? Well, 10 is 6 bigger than 4, so I have 6. Okay. What about if I have positive 5 plus -6? So again, what do I have more of? I have more negatives, so my answer is going to be negative. And how many more negatives do I have? Well, 6 is 1 more than 5. So my answer is -1. You're also going to have to deal with this in more than just 2 numbers. So what about if I do, let's see, -5 plus 3 plus -2 plus I don't know, 6. Okay. So same idea as what we were doing with gains and losses. Group all your negatives together, group all your positives together. So I have -5 plus -2, there are my two negatives together, plus +3 and +6. So if I group all my negatives together, 5 negatives and 2 negatives gives me 7 negatives altogether, plus 3 positives plus 6 positives gives me 9 positives altogether. So then what do I have more of? Do I have more positives? Do I have more negatives? I definitely have more positives, so my answer is going to be positive. And how much more positives do I have? Well, 9 is 2 bigger than 7. Okay, guys? And that's really it for this week. That's all you're doing is just adding integers. And it's the exact same thing as what we did last week, except in just a slightly more mathematical language. Okay? So please do the work that's on the handouts below this. If you have questions, again, shout out in the math channel, and we'll get to you as soon as we can. Have a good week. Happy Easter.